Now, as I was mentioning, the primary point here is to explore meditation and the role it plays in deity worship. Now, what I'll do here is I'll just give you a quick outline of what we're going to cover, and then I'll turn the slideshow off. So, meditation, the role it plays in deity worship. Then we want to look at what meditation is. But as we did last week, we'll just answer a few questions about meditation. What is meditation? And I thought what might be interesting is, rather than just to go straight into what meditation is, we could look at what it isn't, because there are so many ideas out there about what meditation is, but they don't necessarily agree with our, the Vaishnava perspective or the Krishna conscious perspective of meditation. Srila Prabhupada and our acharyas have given a very, very concise understanding of meditation. We'll look at a few definitions, dictionary definitions, Srila Prabhupada's definitions, and also we'll explore what our acharyas, Srila Prabhupada, Rupa Goswami, and others have to say about that. Then an important point of meditation is, what are you trying to achieve with the meditation? So there's a lot of different ideas with that. Some people might think, that the goal of meditation is to become one, or to become, so many different notions on what they might be thinking they're achieving there. But Prabhupada, again, he gives very clear definition on what you achieve through meditation, and a few points there: achieving a higher level of existence, discovering the absolute truth, and know the relationship with Supreme. Okay, so and also we'll explore for Manasa Puja and meditation in general some different considerations. That you can see here, the little man, pluses and minuses, and look at time, place, circumstance, what the object of meditation needs to be, and posture, what's helpful posture, and a few other considerations. Then some other points we'll also discuss is how to deepen the meditation. What's the function of Manasa Puja in deity worship? What does it help us to achieve? And how to actually do it, how to actually do Manasa Puja. Not very complicated. And then some really nice examples of Manasa Puja that are given in the scriptures. Okay, so let's get into this a little bit more deeply now. All right, so first thing I want to look at is Manasa Puja and what it is, and we'll start off, as I mentioned, with some common misconceptions. Now, before coming to Krishna consciousness, I'm sure we all had experiences of meditation and what it was about. And of course, growing up in the 60s and 70s, some of the experiences I got of meditation were very, very different from what I understand meditation to be right now. But some people would think you meditate to cure diseases. Others would think you meditate to become God through the meditation. You'll realize, that ultimately you are the Supreme. Or some people, they think they're going to become the void. They'll just disappear into the void. Helps you to increase memory, to increase the vital force in your body. That's the yoga practice, relaxation, inactivity, or even silence. Now, Srila Prabhupada, just on that last point, there was a morning walk that Srila Prabhupada was on in 1976 in Nellore in India. And he was having a conversation with this Indian gentleman, and the Indian gentleman was talking about meditation. So Prabhupada challenged him. He said, "What is meditation?" And he explains, giving up all thoughts, coming to pure silence of the mind. Prabhupada then said, "So how can you become silent? Is it possible?" The Indian man, "No, just by some sadhana." Prabhupada, "Silent is also, the stones are silent. Does it mean meditation?" Indian man, "But mind cannot be silent. The mind must be made to," and then something indistinct. Prabhupada, "So then how can you make it silent?" Indian man, "By seeing God in everything." Prabhupada, "Meditation is not silence. That is the wrong idea. Meditation means to think of God. That is meditation." So this notion of becoming silent or stopping all thought, which is an idea that's common, is that meditation is a means to stop all thought, but actually the mind cannot stop thinking. So the only way to still the mind, in essence, is to focus on God. And this is considered to be silent. Just like Srila Prabhupada would sometimes say that true silence is to only speak about God. He would sometimes talk about this Mona Brat, or people taking a vow of silence. He said, but you can't be silent. But if you're only thinking of Krishna, or only speaking about Krishna, this is silence. Then there's another one of misconceptions from a Srimad Bhagavatam lecture that Srila Prabhupada gave in 1974. And I'll just read a little bit from the start. It's quite an interesting reference. The Srimad Bhagavatam lecture from 3/26/15 that Srila Prabhupada gave, as I mentioned, December 1974. So he starts off, so Saguna, this word, the Mayavadi theory is Saguna worship and Nirguna worship. Saguna means when you worship a deity in form, that is called Saguna worship. And when you meditate upon impersonal, that is Nirguna. That is their theory. But meditation is not possible unless there is a form. And then he goes on to quote that verse from the 12th chapter of the Gita, explaining how, if to meditate on something without form is very, very difficult, and very difficult to make progress, and says it's troublesome. So, and then Srila Prabhupada explains a little bit later on in the lecture that for the devotee, it's not difficult because the devotee can come before Krishna, the deity of Radha Krishna, saying, here is Radha, here is Krishna, and you can easily meditate upon that form. So there's the notion of impersonal meditation, very, very difficult. So some different meanings, some from the dictionary. The act of meditating, continued or extended thought, contemplation, devout religious contemplation or spiritual introspection. Focus, this is some other definitions. Focus the mind on something, concentrating, form of purification, controlling the mind, subduing the mind. So then the next point I wanted to look at was just a few comments from Srila Prabhupada on what he explains meditation means, and then we'll get a little bit into some deeper things from Rupa Goswami. So this is from a Bhagavad Gita lecture in 1974. Meditation means, as you see the form of Krishna, and whenever you go, the impression of the form will be within your eyes. And if you think of Krishna, your life is successful. Therefore, the deity of Krishna should be seen. That is the benefit of the eyes. The ears should be engaged in hearing about Krishna. So you can see that, when you go to the temple, you take darshan of the deities very beautifully dressed. Then throughout the day, you remember how they're dressed, you remember the color of the outfit, you might remember the patterns on the outfit, you might remember the way the jewelry is hung or the way the garlands are on the deities. And this is meditation because you're absorbed in the thoughts of the form of the Lord. Then from the Bhagavatam 4:6-33, meditation means remembering, smaranam. So to remember about Krishna, to remember the pastimes of Krishna, to remember the beautiful form of Krishna, also very, very helpful. Meditation, this is from Science of Self-Realization. Real meditation means to achieve a state in which the mind is saturated with God consciousness. But if you do not know what God is, how can you meditate? So Prabhupada makes a very, very important point there, is how can you meditate if you don't know what God is? So this is why hearing also, we'll explain this in the next discussion, is that hearing also is a very, very important part of meditation, because we need to hear descriptions about what the Lord looks like so that we can meditate upon some real description or some real form of Krishna, not some imagined form. This is a bit of a pitfall when people start to imagine forms or imagine situations. No, there's plenty of description given in the scriptures. Therefore, by meditating on these descriptions, remembering these descriptions, and we see last week, we were talking about different types of mantras, and these mantras, the Jnana mantras and Stuti mantras, they describe the Lord, the Dham, the Lord's associates, and the Lord's activities, and things like that. And so by learning these mantras, whether it's the Sanskrit or the translation, and being able to remember the Lord's different aspects, then this is very, very helpful for meditation. Now, I just wanted to move on now to Nectar of Devotion, chapter 10, and we'll be kind of crossing backwards and forwards from the Nectar of Devotion to the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, because there's some, Prabhupada in chapter 10, he's taking 4 simple points that Rupa Goswami makes in a few verses and explains them in a whole chapter, basically, and especially the point of meditation. Srila Prabhupada, the 2 points he explains, hearing and meditation, he explains in a fair bit of depth. And it's really interesting to see the way that Srila Prabhupada weaves these 4 points together. So, as I'm saying, chapter 10 is called Techniques of Hearing and Remembering, and it has 4 basic sections there: hearing, expecting the Lord's mercy, remembering, and meditation. So Srila Prabhupada explains in the beginning, he says, to meditate, of the 4th section, to meditate means to engage the mind in thinking of the form, the qualities, the activities, and the service of the Lord. So 4 points there that Prabhupada brings out is the form of the Lord, the qualities of the Lord, the activities of the Lord, and the service of the Lord. Now, if we go to the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, I'm not going to get into the verses, but Rupa Goswami gives the same 4 points, obviously, because it's where Prabhupada's getting it from. But he uses the different, he uses terminology, like Sanskrit terms. And he says, and this is from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1, 2, verses 178 to 182. And the first one, he says, is Rupa Dhyanam, to think of the Lord, to think of the form. Then he says Guna Dhyanam, thinking of the qualities. So Guna meaning quality, Rupa meaning form. Then Krida Dhyanam. Krida means activities. Also, you can understand this to mean the Leela, thinking of the activities of the Lord. So, and then the last one is Seva Dhyanam, thinking of serving the Lord. So this is his description of meditation, which, if we look back, earlier on in that second part of the Nectar of Devotion, I can't remember what it's called. I think it's called an ocean. No, actually, it's the first ocean. It's the second wave. That's right, because 1 means the Eastern Ocean, and 2 would mean the second wave. But if you go back earlier on in that wave, you'll see that verses 82 to 94. That's the section where Rupa Goswami, he explains the 4 things that we should do. There's Guru Parashaya, Diksha Gurus, like take shoulder lotus for the spiritual master, serving, etc., take initiation. Then he explains the 10 things we shouldn't do. Then he explains from verses 84 to 92, 44 additional items of devotional service. So items 23, 24, 25, and 26 are these 4 items here: hearing, expecting the Lord's mercy, remembrance, and meditation. So then later on in that same chapter, that same section, he expands them, especially, he expands all of them, but I'm just focusing on meditation here. And as I mentioned, the thinking of the form, thinking of the qualities, thinking of the activities, and thinking of serving the Lord. Then meditation itself has 2 components, jhana and manasa puja. So last week we discussed a little bit about the jhana mantras, and you may remember the point behind the jhana mantras was to fix the form of the dham, for instance, because obviously if you're going to worship someone, they need to be located somewhere. So the first thing you'll do is you'll fix the form of the person in the dham. Now, when we say, for instance, when we start the worship, we might do, like when we're worshiping Lord Chaitanya, or before we worship Lord Chaitanya, we'll worship spiritual master. But before we do that, we talk about the situation of the spiritual master. And there's a verse that, at the yoga pit in Sridhar Mayapur, Lord Chaitanya and his associates are standing on a jewel throne. And at the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya, on a jewel platform, my spiritual master sits. So it's kind of conjuring up in your mind, in your consciousness, a vision of where the Guru is located, talking about Lord Chaitanya and his different associates. And then, so the next thing would be to meditate upon, chant another jhana mantra, which will then meditate upon the form of the Guru, and you just progress like that. So jhana, it essentially means to concentrate the mind on the form or the rupa, the qualities and the pastimes of the Lord and his associates, or the Dharma. And this is generally done by chanting mantras and meditating on their meaning. And if I just go across to a little section from the Method of Worship, which is the Deity Worship book that will be coming out soon, I hope. Jayananda and I have been working on this 2-3 days a week now, so we are actually making quite tangible progress. It's very good. So jhana means concentration of the mind on the Lord and his associates, paramaneya, pastimes and abode. In deity worship, the object of meditation is the deity being worshipped. The mind is purified through Buddha Shuddhi, becomes spiritualized by concentrating on the Lord's form and pastimes. So it's, again, this is a part of the purification that we go through, is rather than allowing our mind to fill up with all the nonsense that's out there in the material world, we purify our mind by concentrating upon the Supreme Pure, by concentrating upon Krishna. And as Krishna declares in the 6th chapter of the Gita, when the mind is engaged in the service of the senses, it's the worst enemy. But when the mind is engaged in the service of the Lord, it is the greatest friend. So by spiritualizing the mind in this way, by absorbing ourselves in the Lord's form, pastimes, his Dharma, his associates in that, then it becomes quite purified. It actually becomes a very, very conducive situation. And Jiva Goswami also points out that dhyan should be on the form of the Lord situated in his eternal abode, not the form of the Lord in the heart or some other form. So usually, the form of the Lord in his abode, and this would be achieved by reading authorized descriptions of the Lord from Shastra and things like that. Then the next point I just want to look at is so I was mentioning here that jhana has two components, dhyan and manas puja. So the jhana, actually, what I'll do is I'll show you another slide, just to, I think it'll help to make this a little bit easier to comprehend rather than just trying to describe it to you. Here we go. Share this screen. All right, so hopefully you're seeing that we see here meditation divisions, right? So we have meditation here, and as we're saying, there's dhyan and there's manasa puja there, and you'll see here that under dhyan there's the meditation on the form, meditation on the qualities, and meditation upon the activities. So these things are all contained in dhyan. Now, if you look, for instance, at the mantras we were discussing last week, say for instance, take the Guru Dhyan. So this mantra, Prata Sriman Navadvipe Dvi Neptam Vipujam Guru, it's describing Prata means the morning, Sriman Navadvipe in Navadvip Dham, yeah. Prata Sriman Dvi Netram means eyes. He's got Dvi Netram, 2 eyes, 2 arms, etc. like that. He's describing the form of the Guru. So this is actually a Rupa Dhyan, meditating upon the form of the Guru. Then, if you look at the Gauranga Dhyan, I don't remember the mantra so well. I don't know the whole thing. This is more, it's talking about the Lord's wonderful activities. So this then becomes a Krida Dhyan, according to the terminology Rupa Goswami uses. Then, if we look at later on the puja, you might be talking about the Vrindavan Dhyan. So this is quite a lengthy mantra, but this is looking at the form and the qualities of Sri Vrindavan Dham. So it's describing, the beautiful trees, the waterfalls, the jewels in the sand, and everything like that. But also talking about how it is able to invigorate and inspire people, to serve the Lord. So we're talking about form and qualities. Then, if you look at the Radha Krishna Dhyan, which is generally this mantra Divya Vrindaranya Kalpatrumada. This is talking about the activities, because it talks about on a jeweled throne in Sri Vrindavan Dham, Radha Krishna is sitting there and they're enjoying pastimes with all their loving associates. So it doesn't get so much into the description of the form, but it talks more about the wonderful activities of the Lord. Yeah? Then, as I was saying, the other aspect of the meditation is the Manasa Puja. So as we see, Srila Prabhupada described those four things at the start there. He was saying how meditation means to engage in the mind in thinking of the form, the qualities of the Lord, and the activities of the Lord, and the service of the Lord. That means us serving Krishna. That's the Manasa Puja. Yeah? So I hope that was helpful for you there. We can just finish that one. So the point being here is to understand, because it's mentioned, as I was saying, in the Nectar Devotion, it's mentioned, the importance of Manasa Puja, of meditation, but then it doesn't really give a lot of definition and break it so clearly into the categories. But when you look at this diagram, for instance, it helps us to see how the Jan mantras we're chanting, they fulfill the function of the first part of the meditation, meaning to think of the form, the qualities, and the activities of the Lord, of the Dharma, of the Lord's associates, things like that. And then the fourth point that Prabhupada talks about here is to meditate upon the service. And this is the Manasa Puja. So Manasa Puja focuses on the service or the seva we do to the Lord. That's why it's called Seva Dhyana. Yeah? Right, so just to touch on a few points here from Prabhupada about what we achieve from meditation. In one morning walk, he talks about achieving a higher level of existence. And because so many times, people might talk about, oh, I meditate because it does this for me, does that for me. But then Srila Prabhupada, being a very, very practical person, he would often say, well, what is the evidence of this higher existence? And he said, in this conversation, he says, but if you cannot give up even smoking, are you in a higher level of consciousness? So what is the proof that you are on the higher level of consciousness if you cannot give up ordinary things? So one of the aspects there is that by engaging in meditation and experiencing the fruit or the result of meditation, is we're able to give up this lower consciousness. And as Prabhupada is saying here, you give up the things like smoking, etc. Then another one that Srila Prabhupada talks about, he says meditation, I think this is from the book Dialectic Spiritualism. Meditation means to analyze oneself. That is real meditation, and find out the absolute truth. Interestingly enough, the Sri Vaishnavas, they have a definition, or they analyze worship in terms of Panchanga Bhakti. Panchanga Puja, not Panchanga Bhakti. Panchanga Puja meaning worship with 5 angas. And they have this, Abhigamana, Upadana, Yoga, Ija, Swadhyaya. And actually they go Abhigamana, Upadana, Ija, Swadhyaya, and Yoga. Yoga they put at the last one. And their idea is that this yoga means in the evening, just before you retire, you sit down for a while and you just reflect upon your daily activities, and you analyze yourself. You analyze how did I respond to this situation? How am I progressing in Krishna consciousness? Just all these different things. So that's their definition of it. Then another one that Prabhupada mentions, he says, meditation is a process for cleansing the heart. So that goes back to the point I was saying before, is that when you engage in meditation, you're associating directly with Krishna. So the point of meditating is that the different anarthas become purified, and the mind becomes situated in Krishna consciousness. And this way, these different anarthas are removed from the heart. And ultimately, Prabhupada explains, is meditation means to try to understand one's relationship with the Supreme. So by removing the different anarthas from the heart, then our understanding of the Supreme Lord deepens. So I wanted to look at just some, I might just change the order a little bit here, because it seems to me like I could do in the details later. So one of the points here we can look at is, what is the function of Manasa Puja? So Manasa Puja is really amazing, because just like, you know, sometimes we might live in a temple that's quite opulent, or sometimes we might live in a temple that doesn't have much material facility. But that doesn't really matter, and it doesn't really affect the worship, because in the worship you can meditate on very, very opulent facilities without having anything or practically nothing to offer. Some examples I can think of is when Srila Prabhupada was instructing Jamuna in deity worship in London. He encouraged her to, before she started the worship, to sit down and meditate on bringing water from the Ganges and the Jamuna. I think specifically he said from the Jamuna. And she said, but Prabhupada, I don't know what the Jamuna looks like. And so Prabhupada described the Jamuna to her. And he said, you meditate that you're bringing it in golden pots, and there's jewels in the pots, and all these different things. So he was talking to her about a very, very opulent situation, because what temple could afford to have solid gold pots, let alone solid silver? You know, I remember years ago seeing in Jaipur these large, you know, they're probably about, you know, I don't know, 400 or 500 mil tall silver pots. Actually, no, sorry, I'm wrong. They were over a meter tall. They were gigantic. I think they were 900 liters each, or something like that. And the king of Jaipur had these. And when he went to visit England, he took all this Ganges water on the boat with him, because he never bathed in anything except Ganges water, and it was all in these large silver pots. And I think there was, you know, several hundred of them. There was only one left when I saw it, but yeah, he just had so much wealth. But, you know, temples obviously couldn't afford this. But you can meditate in the Manasa Puja on very, very opulent circumstances. Same as we see in the 10th chapter of the Nectar of Devotion, this Brahmana who, you know, the story of the Brahmana and the sweet rice. You know, he was very, very poor, yet nonetheless he engaged in meditation, and he was meditating on very, very opulent facilities, and he was cooking the Lord sweet rice in a golden pot. And you know, he wanted to, you know, there's different descriptions. Prabhupada gives one description, Jiva Goswami gives a different description. Either way, the point of the story is the same, is that, you know, he was doing very, very elaborate and opulent worship in his meditation, but at one point in the meditation, he burnt his finger on the sweet rice. And actually, when he woke up, he saw that, you know, when he came out of the meditation, he saw that his finger and thumb were actually burnt. So there's you know, a lot of opportunity for that. You can also meditate upon the Lord's associates. You can meditate on, you know, being nice kirtans there for the Lord, and beautiful seats, and, you know, devotees fanning the deities, and beautiful silken canopies over the deity's head, and just so much opulence. Yeah? And then in Manasa Puja, that you can also envisage different situations. You know, you can envisage the Dham. There's nice descriptions of the Dham, the Lord's associates there. And also, one of the things that's very helpful with Manasa Puja, it helps us to understand that you know, the Lord is not simply the deity form, or that the deity is not simply stone or wood or metal. Meditating on the Lord's form and Dharma and associates helps us to understand him as being beyond the deity, not just like the material form we see in front of us, but that actually the Lord is a transcendental personality. And then when we do the external worship, after the consciousness becomes more focused through the Manasa Puja, then the service, you know, it becomes like actual service to the Lord, and not so much just the technicalities of the ritual. So it's very, very helpful that, you know, it helps us in understanding more about the Lord and actually what's going on with the ritual, etc. And of course, it helps us to become more absorbed in the form of the Lord we see before us, and accepting him as a person. Okay, so just a quick, I'll do like a quick walkthrough, if you like, on Manasa Puja. It's very simple. I mean, because some devotees get, you know, really absorbed in a whole meditation thing. And I know one devotee, it takes him about 45 minutes to do his Manasa Puja. Yet we see with the way that Krishna Chaitanya Maharaj explained it to me, it was just like a slideshow. So say, for instance, we're offering Sosa Upachar Puja, which means 16 items of worship to the Lord, then you'll just visualize each one. So the first one would be a seat for the Lord to sit on. So you can visualize a very, very opulent seat, with jewels and gold and beautiful silk and canopy over the top of it, whatever. Then the next thing is swagatam, or welcome. So you could meditate on there being a nice kirtan and devotees fanning the deities, and offering a footstool and just all these nice things to make the Lord feel very, very welcome. Then it goes through bathing the feet, and then offering water for reception, and then water for drinking, and then nice opulent foods. And you can meditate on these things in a very, very wonderful way. And it's like a little bit like a slideshow, but quite fluid, just moving quickly from one to the next. Yeah. And now we'll just look a little bit at ways of deepening the meditation. So, as I was explaining just before, how it assists, it assists us in the worship to develop a deeper understanding of the deity, but also when we start to understand the way the whole worship develops, say for instance from the beginning stage, it's all a progression of purity. We're starting with the gross purity, making sure the paraphernalia is clean, making sure the place where I do the worship is clean, that I'm clean, my clothes are clean, my body is clean. And then we move on to more subtle things like prayers called Bhuta Shuddhi, understanding that I'm not this external body, but I'm Krishna's eternal servant. And then we start to move on to the Dham Jhan, then the Jhan for the person I'm worshipping in the Dham. And then it just becomes like deeper and deeper in stages of purity. And this also helps us to be more focused, because we've gone from the whole idea is we've progressed from this external thing and just move sort of steadily through the worship till we get situated in the Dham and situated in a way where we're serving that personality, whoever it may be, whether it's the Guru or Lord Chaitanya or Jagannath Subhadra or Sitaram Lakshman or Radha Krishna, whoever it is you're worshipping. But the idea is to become absorbed in that worship. And so rather than just being caught up in the externals of the worship, and this is why it's kind of important to look at things like, if you struggle with mantras, don't worry about the mantras, just learn the translations. And try to learn the worship as quickly as you can, so you don't have to worry about the mechanics of it. You just do it. It's what they call unconscious competence. I did a webinar just recently, and the devotee was talking about that there's two kind of things. There's competence and incompetence. There's conscious and unconscious. So the higher thing is to be unconsciously competent. It's just like someone who's experienced about driving a car, like a manual car, for instance. You don't really need to think about when to change gears. You just your subconscious mind hears the revolutions of the motor, how fast it's going, and you just know, that's the time to change gear. You don't have to think about it. So in the same way, in the evolution of deity worship, as you become more and more adept at the process, of the ritual, then that enables you to become deeper and deeper in the absorption with the Lord, which is actually the goal of deity worship. The goal of deity worship is not just learning how to do a ritual. The goal of deity worship is to learn the rituals, to get past the mechanics of the rituals, so you can actually become more and more absorbed in serving Krishna. So you can actually become more and more present with Krishna through the process of Jnana and Manasa Puja. Yeah. So very, very important point. And we see, like, in that story of the Brahmana and the sweet rice, how, he performed all the externals, but then once he got past the externals, he actually just became completely absorbed in this mood of worshipping the Lord. And he was just completely absorbed in worshipping the Lord. So much so he was absorbed that when he touched the boiling hot sweet rice, he physically burnt his fingers. And so this can also happen for us. Yeah? All right, so I just wanted to briefly go over different things that are helpful and not helpful. when we're doing Manasa Puja. Time, place, circumstance are very important. Obviously auspicious times like Brahma Muhurta, Sandhyas, and things like that. Regularity is something you need to practice regular. Then also, very difficult to do Manasa Puja or meditate upon the Lord in a busy place where there's lots of activity. You obviously it would be very difficult to sit down in a busy supermarket, for instance, and meditate. And much the same as when you're chanting japa, when there's a lot of activity going on, it's very, very hard to focus on your japa, which is also a type of meditation. Place, obviously the best place to do Manasa Puja or meditation is in the Dham, or the temple, and a secluded place. As we see Krishna explains in the Gita 6, 11 and 12, to practice yoga, once you go to a secluded place, and he talks about laying Krishna grass, etc. And then he said the yogi should then sit on it very firmly and practice yoga, purify the heart by controlling his mind. So this point again, you purify the heart by controlling the mind, because if the mind is just rampant and focusing on all these material objects and things like that, very, very difficult and slow, the purification of the heart. So a very, very important point. So purify the heart by controlling his mind, senses and activities, and fixing the mind on one point. And obviously that one point is not like, the void or Brahman or anything like that. That one point is Krishna. And, to meditate or do Manasa Puja in front of Tulsi, in front of the deity is also very effective. Clean environment. This is a really important part. If you look at the story of the Brahma and the sweet rice, he bathed first, he cleaned his environment, then he sat down and did Manasa Puja. Not in a dirty place. And very important. And of course, circumstances, no distractions, a suitable atmosphere, so there's no external distractions, needs to be clean. Right mood, you chant Bhuta Shuddhi, these different prayers as describing before, that lead from the external through to the internal. And Sanatana Goswami also mentions that the Manasa Puja should not be broken. So if you think you're going to have to get up to do something, then maybe you should do that before you sit down and do Manasa Puja. It's better to not break the Manasa Puja. Then the object, if we look at the impersonalists, they obviously from our perspective have the wrong object in mind, and the object from our perspective obviously is Krishna. Then posture, as Krishna describes in the 6th chapter, text 13 and 14, you sit, one's body and neck, head straight in a straight line. There's all this, guidance there. Unagitated, subdued mind, devoid of fear, completely free from sex life, and Krishna says to meditate upon him. Attitude, very important attitude, is to think of myself as the servant of the servant, and try to be prepared mentally and physical. And the Manasa Puja, it actually helps deeply in our purification, because consciousness, heart, mind, they're all synonymous with one another. Then other things you might want to consider is the form we have. Sometimes devotees might think that, well, am I this, am I that? Maybe I'm a gopi, maybe I'm a cowherd boy, whatever. From the perspective of the meditator, the form is not really part of the equation. The point here is we're meditating upon serving the Lord. It's not about me. It's about Krishna. It's about how I serve Krishna. So, we don't tend to worry about that sort of stuff so much. And as Srila Prabhupada did mention a number of times, that will become revealed to you in due course of time. Whatever your form is or what it should be or whatever, that becomes revealed to you when you are qualified. And what form of the Lord do we meditate upon? You can meditate, like if you're worshipping, you have Radha Krishna deities there, just meditate upon them. It's simple enough. Or you can meditate upon authorized descriptions in the Shastra. But it's easier if you're just meditating upon the deity that's in front of you. That's why he's appeared before us, so we can constantly think of him. Now, we have to be careful also about, realizing what is the Vaishnava method, Vaishnava process of doing these things, and the notions of the sahajas. With the sahajas, their kind of idea is more about enjoying the Lord, more about enjoying the situation, rather than just one of service. For the Vaishnava, the main thing is just that Krishna becomes pleased. Whether I suffer, it's like we see that that prayer in the Shastastika. It's like, when I'm situated in a hellish situation, or where the Lord's trampling me on his feet, I don't really mind. My only business is I want to please him. So this is the whole idea. What else we got? Oh yeah. Another misconception there is sometimes we see that devotees have this idea they can substitute manasa puja for their regular external worship when they're unable to do the external worship. The manasa puja actually needs to accompany the regular worship, and on occasion when you may not be able to do the worship because of traveling, then you still continue with the manasa. But Prabhupada didn't seem to put that much emphasis on the manasa. My understanding of the way that Prabhupada taught deity worship was one would do the manasa to deepen their meditation in the external worship. Srila Prabhupada was very much about the practical external worship. So that's just a few points on manasa puja, etc. Okay, so again, I really am appreciative and thankful for all of you for attending these webinars. And if you have any questions, well, I'll be really happy to share my limited understanding with you. Okay, so how do I get to question land? Okay. Okay, so Stoker Krishnabru from Melbourne, he's asked a question. What if I find it hard to picture images in my mind? Even if I manage to get an image, it quickly morphs into other completely unrelated things. This is a problem. This is a problem because the mind has become so contaminated by the material nature. There's a really nice purport that Prabhupada quotes. I mentioned it last week, I think. He quotes it in the Adi Leela 776. He also quotes it in Madhya Leela 15:108. And Jiva Goswami is talking about how the jivas are very, very contaminated by the modes of material nature, and therefore they need to how should we say that they need this. The mind needs to become purified, and he says therefore. Deity worship is essential. So in the beginning stages, manasa puja is quite difficult. Not necessarily difficult, but it sort of, it can, as you're saying there, Stoker Krishna, it can kind of morph into some other, sometimes unwholesome kind of thoughts. But as with anything, as Krishna says in the Gita, by constant practice and detachment, you withdraw the mind from wherever it may wander and bring it back under the control of the self. So this is the only real way to achieve that, is just to bring it under the control of the self by practice. So yeah, in the beginning stages you might find it wanders a bit, but after some time you'll find that it very easily comes back under the control of the self. Okay, Vijay Baladev Prabhu from South Africa, always lots of nice questions, which I appreciate. I have 2 points. Normally, when we do the manasa puja, the spell checker, there's manama, just before offering 16 times of puja, but sometimes there might be distractions from other pujaris serving. Would it be okay to do the manasa puja, for example, just after chanting a morning Gayatri in the temple room when it's quiet? I probably wouldn't do it in the temple room, but one thing you can do is everything up to the point of when you offer asan to the deities can be done outside the deity room. For instance, like you do all the you set up all your paraphernalia in the deity room wherever you're going to do the worship and that. But then all the preliminary worship, the Bhuta Shuddhi, all this chanting of prayers, identifying yourself as a servant of Krishna. Then the Dham Dhyan, the Guru Dhyan, the Guru Puja, the Guru Manasa worship, etc. like that. If you're worshipping a picture of your Guru, then you might go on. If you're doing Radha Krishna worship from there, you would go on to Navadvip Dham, and then Garanga Dhyan, Garanga Manasa Puja, then Garanga Bahya Puja. Actually, before that, you probably do Prabhupada, then do the Bahya Puja. You can do all that for a picture, but you could do that in a quiet room, in a quiet corner of the Pujari department somewhere, if you can find a quiet spot. So if sometimes the deity room is a little bit hectic and there's a lot going on, so you could do that somewhere else. It's not a problem with that. And if you've been to Mayapur, you may notice that on the Panchatattva, if you've ever been in the back of the Panchatattva building, there's a door on Srivasa's side of the altar, side of the building, and it goes upstairs. And if you get up the top of the stairs, there's 4 compartments there, which don't get used, but Jananivasa's original idea was that would be where the Pujari, actually five compartments, because there's one for each deity. That was going to be where the Pujaris would do all the preliminary worship. So they'd have a picture of their Guru and a picture of Prabhupada and all the other personalities they needed to have there. And then they would do all that preliminary worship there before going on the altar, which they could even do during Mangalarti, if time was a consideration. And sometimes you might find, say for instance, you're in a situation where you're doing worshipping 2 sets of deities, then it might be quite helpful, because generally what happens when you worship, when you're a bit overloaded with worship, is you'll cut out all these kind of preliminaries and stuff and just get in there and bathe and dress the deities, so you're done with it quickly. But there are different ways of doing it. Also, I know, for instance, in Chaupati temple, the devotee who does the shalagram worship, usually during Mangalarti, he's doing all the preliminary worship, all the setup, and then when Mangalarti finishes, they bring the shalagram off the altar into the room on the side of the altar there, and the Pujari does the Bahya Puja, or the external puja there. Okay, so then the second question from Vijay Baladev is also, when I do Manasa Puja, I like to recite the different mantras for offering the items in my mind. It helps. Is it better to close our eyes, or rather keep them open and look at the items we offer? It is one of the things to consider here. When I was first shown how to do Manasa Puja, I was shown to do it using an archman cup and a spoon and just chanting the mantras with water. But then I was discussing this with Banaswami, and he made the point, as soon as you do something external, it's no longer Manasa Puja. It's actually Bahya Puja. So if you're looking at the items, or if you're chanting the prayers, then it's no longer Manasa Puja, it's actually Bahya. So the idea is to keep it internal. So if closing your eyes is more helpful, that's fine. If in your mind you're meditating on the mantras, if that's assist, that's fine. But I wouldn't verbalize the mantra, because then it's no longer Manasa, it's Bahya. Yeah, I hope that's clear for you. Do we offer item? This is from Kirtaniya Dasi. I don't know Kirtaniya, but thank you for your question. Do we offer items such as incense in Manasa Puja, as in physical worship, by performing a certain number of laps? I assume you mean circles. You can do that. That's kind of normal, because that's just the normal way you offer things. So you would reflect that in your Manasa Puja. Not that you do something necessarily different, but the difference being is you can be very, very opulent. Rather than using some incense which is made of chemicals, you can be using incense which is made of aguru and pure sandalwood and all these different types of things. Things will be very, very pleasing to Krishna. So yeah, you would do it the same, and you go through the 16 items. 16 items. I was thinking of doing a presentation on 16 items the week after next. I'll do the presentation a little bit different. I want to put up a whiteboard at the back here, and I'll do a whiteboard presentation, and so you can see. And I was just going to cover 2 main elements of the 16 items. Go through the 16 items, or the divisions of the items. You may remember the Bhog offering. I talked about the 5 steps in the Bhog offering. Similarly, in the 16 items, there's steps of worship that are followed there. And just go through all those different steps, and then later on just show that the way the worship cycles through the jhans and the dhyan, the manasta, the bhaya, things like that, just to give you a clear idea of how the whole thing's structured. Because if you can visualize these things clearly in your mind, then it's much easier to remember them when you're physically doing the worship. Yeah? And that's, as I was mentioning before, it's really important if you can get to the point of not being caught up in the mechanics of the worship, but get to the point of developing your relationship with Krishna. And this is going to come by absorbing yourself in the jhana and also in the manasa. This is really going to assist you in developing your relationship with Krishna. So very, very important point. If you can, work on getting past the mechanics of, or how many times do I offer this, and do I offer this first, or do I offer that first? The idea is just that it should become second nature. As I was mentioning, this whole point of unconscious competence means you know exactly what you're doing, you don't have to think about it. Conscious competence means you have to think, you're good at it, but you have to think about it. Unconscious competence means you're good at it and you don't have to think about all that stuff. Rather, you think about the exchange with Krishna and just doing everything very, very nicely for him, treating him as a person, making sure everything is there to serve the Lord. Okay, some other questions. This is from Rahul Binyani, and he's asking, can we do Abhishek with normal water and rose water? We do when we do daily Abhishek, or should we do with Panchamrita? Just do whatever's easy for you to maintain. Even if it's just plain water, plain tap water is fine. Main thing is that the water should come from a pure place. Don't take water from the bathroom or from a tap which people drink from. Try to always ensure your water comes from a pure place. If you can put rose water in it, that's very nice. If you can put chandan in it, that's also very nice. Chandan meaning sandalwood paste. You can put different fragrant oils in there and things like that. It's also very nice. If you have the facility and the time to do Panchamrita, Panchamrita means milk, yogurt, ghee, honey, sugar water. You can do that every day. Where I live here in Australia, they do a Panchamrita Abhishek for the Shalagram every Ekadasi, or for the Goran Shiva every Ekadasi. So, it just really depends on what you can practically maintain. If you can't maintain the Panchamrita Abhishek, maybe just do it once on a Ekadasi, or maybe do it on festivals related to the deity, like you could do it on Janmashtami or something like that. So, different things, A lot of it just gets down to what you can practically maintain. Rahul Binyani again, can we use one incense to do Tulsi Aarti? Yeah, it gets down to what resources, what facilities you have. If you're finding, using 3 sticks of incense is creating a lot of smoke and making the ceilings go smoky and stuff like that, then just use one. I know at Bhaktivedanta Manor, they cut the incense sticks into short pieces like that. And then they'll offer that to the deities. And one of the reasons they do that is because they have a heritage listed building there and they don't want to damage it with all the smoke. So they want to offer incense, they want to follow the process, but they cut the sticks down shorter so that, excuse me, they cut the sticks down shorter so that they can still follow the process, but it's not so much incense. Okay, I think there's another one from Rahul Binyani. Can we use vinegar? Generally not. Vinegar is considered tamasic because it's fermented. Generally we don't use vinegar, especially when offering to the deities. Yeah, we wouldn't use vinegar at all. Okay, so thank you all very much for kindly being here, participating. And as I mentioned at the beginning, please visit our YouTube channel. If you like the videos, then click on like, share them with others, subscribe to our channel. Also, please, as much as you can on Facebook, those of you on Facebook, please share these videos with your friends. We just really, really want to get this knowledge out there to the devotees. So again, I really deeply appreciate your participation and look forward to seeing you next week. Next week, I was thinking of discussing the 10 principles of deity worship. So yeah, look forward to serving you all again there. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.